Hey guys, tonight we are traveling to a place without paper, without ink, without a single written word. We're heading to the dizzying heights of the Inca Empire, a civilization that managed a territory stretching 2,500 miles using only knotted strings, sturdy legs, and a frankly astonishing amount of organizational genius. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this. The air is so thin it's basically a cosmic joke, and the only Wi-Fi signal is the sun burning the back of your neck. Your carefully curated cardio routine from back home means absolutely nothing here. The mountain has a way of making everyone feel like a beginner. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always a quiet thrill to see this little corner of the internet stretch across so many time zones. A small web of people all choosing to unwind in the same strange, historical way. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Breathe in and out. Feel the weight of your body settling, becoming heavier, softer. Now, imagine that simple act of breathing has suddenly become a conscious effort. Each breath you pull in feels incomplete. It's thin, crisp, and cold, but it doesn't seem to fill your lungs the way it should. Your head feels like it's floating a few inches above your shoulders, a light, fuzzy balloon tethered loosely to your neck. This is the first sensation of arriving in the Andes, thousands of feet above the familiar, oxygen-rich world you've left behind. You're standing on a narrow stone path, a thread of human determination laid across an impossibly vast green and brown landscape. The sun here is different. It's not a warm, hazy glow. It's a brilliant, almost aggressive white light that makes the shadows of the clouds razor-sharp as they drift across the mountainsides. The path under your feet is made of stones fitted so neatly together you can't help but run your hand over their smooth, cool surfaces. They've been here for centuries, worn down by the sandals of messengers, priests, and lamas carrying burdens of maize and textiles. Your modern hiking boots, which felt so practical this morning, now seem clunky and absurdly loud on these silent stones. Every few steps, you have to pause, resting your hands on your knees, trying to convince your heart that this isn't a genuine emergency. It's just geography. The local people, of course, have been living at this altitude for millennia. Their bodies subtly and profoundly adapted to this oxygen world. It's a widely accepted historical fact that Andean highlanders have developed larger lung capacities and higher concentrations of hemoglobin in their blood, making them biological superheroes in an environment where you feel like you're breathing through a cocktail straw. You watch a young boy herd a small group of alpacas up a slope so steep it looks almost vertical, and he isn't even remotely out of breath. It's both inspiring and deeply, personally insulting. An old man, his face a beautiful roadmap of wrinkles, carved by the sun and wind, is walking a little ways ahead of you. He notices your struggle and waits, his expression not one of pity, but of quiet understanding. He gestures to a small, woven bag at his side and pulls out a cluster of dry, green leaves. He holds them out to you. Coca leaves. This is the famous, ancient remedy for soroshi, or altitude sickness. It's a lesser-known detail for outsiders that the experience isn't about some grand chemical rush. It's subtle, earthy, and practical. You take a few leaves, as he shows you, and tuck them into your cheek. The taste is bitter, like green tea, and soon a gentle numbness spreads across your tongue and gums. It's a strange, pins and needles feeling, but as you continue walking, you notice the tight band around your head seems to have loosened just a little. The world feels slightly more anchored. As you walk, the path rounds a bend, and a breathtaking valley opens up below. The mountainsides are carved into thousands of neat, stair-like terraces, some still green with crops. It's a stunning display of agricultural engineering, turning impossible slopes into productive farmland. And this raises one of the great, open questions for historians. How did the Inca state manage the logistics of acclimatization on a massive scale, when they needed to move thousands of workers from the lowlands to build a mountaintop citadel like Machu Picchu? How did they do it? Did they move people in slow, careful stages, letting them adapt over weeks or months? Or did they possess some deep botanical knowledge, a system of herbs and remedies far beyond the coca leaf, that allowed their people to function in this thin, draining air? We have records of their roads, their food storage, their lulls, but the Human Resources Manual for not passing out at 12,000 feet, that, it seems, was never written down. The sun is beginning to dip lower now, and the air, which was already cool, is taking on a distinct evening chill. The brilliant white light softens into a warm, golden honey that spills over the western peaks. The sharp shadows of the mountains stretch out, becoming long, purple fingers reaching across the valley floor. Your pace is slow, measured. You're no longer fighting the altitude, but simply moving with it, accepting its terms. Your journey for the day is almost over. Ahead, nestled in a small fold of the mountain, you can just make out the low stone shapes of a small village, a plume of gentle smoke rising from a chimney. It's a quiet, humble sight, a promise of rest and a warm fire in a world of colossal, silent stone and impossibly thin air. You take one last, deep pour, as deep as you can manage breath, the strange, numb tingle of coca still on your tongue, and you follow the old man down the final stretch of the path, toward the quiet welcome of the approaching dusk. The quiet of the evening deepens as you and your guide approach the first stone dwellings of the village. The world has narrowed to the sound of your own breathing, the soft scuff of your boots on the path, and the whisper of a cold wind snaking down from the icy peaks above. The mountains, which were golden just moments ago, are now fading into deep purple silhouettes against a sky the color of a fading bruise. The air is so still, you feel like you could hear a leaf fall a mile away. And that's when you hear it. It's not a leaf. It's a rhythmic, insistent pounding. Thump thump. It's too fast for a walker, too steady for an animal. It's the sound of purpose. Your elderly guide stops, turning his head, not with alarm, but with a kind of practiced reverence. He puts a hand on your arm, a silent signal to be still and watch. The pounding gets louder, and then, around a curve in the path below, he appears. A young man, running, and not just jogging. He is sprinting, his bare feet slapping against the cold stones with a speed that seems utterly impossible in this oxygen-starved air. You, who have spent the day feeling like a deep-sea fish flopping on a pier, can only watch and bewildered. He wears little more than a simple tunic, his legs and arms lean and corded with muscle. He moves with a liquid grace, his body a perfectly tuned instrument for this one specific task, to run. This is Achosky, one of the legendary relay runners of the Inca Empire. He carries no backpack, no gear, nothing that would slow him down. Tucked into the small of his back is a small woven bag, and slung over his shoulder is the reason for his haste. A coiled cluster of knotted strings, the Quipu. It looks like a strange, colorful octopus, its tentacles inert for now, but you know it carries a message. This runner, and thousands like him, formed the nervous system of the empire. It's a widely accepted historical fact that this relay system allowed the Sapa Inca in Cusco to receive messages from the farthest reaches of his territory, a distance of over 1,200 miles in under a week. It was an analog fiber optic network made of pure human endurance, transmitting data at the speed of a dead sprint. Your modern food delivery app, which struggles to cross 5 miles of city traffic in under an hour, suddenly feels rather primitive. As he draws nearer, you see the details. A white feather is tucked into his headband, marking him as an official imperial messenger. At his side, dangling from a cord, is a beautifully curved and polished conch shell. This is his putatu, a trumpet to be sounded as he approached the next relay station, or tambo, to let the waiting runner know he was coming. This is a fascinatingly practical detail of the system. The handoff had to be seamless. There was no time to wake a sleeping runner or wait for him to get ready. The sound of the putatu echoing through the valley was the signal. Data incoming. Prepare to run. It was an organic, hauntingly beautiful notification chime for the Empire's operating system. He passes you in a blur of controlled energy, his face a mask of intense concentration. He doesn't even seem to see you. His world is the path ahead, the message on his back, and the rhythm of his own heart and feet. He is a single, vital packet of information, and his only job is to get to the next node in the network. As you watch him recede down the path, the rhythmic pounding of his feet fading once more, you're left with a profound sense of the Empire's scale and organization, and it sparks a question that historians still debate. What else did they carry? Official records speak of them transporting messages, small, precious goods, and even fresh fish from the coast for the Emperor's table. But did they also carry gossip? Did they act as the Emperor's eyes and ears, reporting on the mood of a restless province or the competence of a local governor? In a world without writing, these runners were not just mail carriers. They were the most reliable source of intelligence. How much of the Empire's stability rested not on the knots and the strings, but on the whispered words exchanged between two breathless runners in the half-light of a mountain pass. The runner is gone. The silence rushes back in to fill the space he left behind, and the mountains seem to settle once more into their ancient slumber. The brief, energetic intrusion is over. You look at your guide, who simply nods, as if to say, "That is the way of things." The blood of the Empire flows along these stone veins, and you were just lucky enough to see a single pulse go by. The smell of wood smoke is stronger now, pulling you forward. You take a final look down the empty path, then turn and follow the old man into the warm, flickering light of the village, leaving the grand, invisible machinery of the state behind for the simple, human comfort of a hearth. The boundary between the wild mountain and the human settlement isn't a wall or a gate. It's a gradual shift in the air itself. The sharp, sterile wind gives way to something softer, thicker, scented with wood smoke, and the warm, earthy smell of cooking tubers. You follow your guide as he navigates the narrow pathways between a cluster of low, circular stone huts. They are built from the same gray and brown rock as the mountains around you, so they seem to grow organically from the earth. Their thick, honey-colored thatched roofs pulled down low like cozy hats. There are no streetlights, of course. The only illumination comes from the warm, orange glow spilling from the open doorways, casting long, flickering shadows that dance and play on the stone walls. It feels less like a town and more like a collection of campfires, each one a tiny pocket of warmth and life in the immense cold darkness. Your guide leads you to one of these huts and gestures for you to enter. You have to duck your head to get through the low, trapezoidal doorway, a signature of Inca architecture you've only ever seen in pictures. The inside is a single, simple room. It is surprisingly warm, the heat radiating from a central fire pit where a small, steady flame crackles merrily. There are no chairs, no tables. Along the stone walls are raised platforms, covered in thick woven wool, blankets, falpaca, you guess, from their incredible softness. This, you realize, is your bed for the night. As your eyes adjust to the dim light, you notice movement on the floor, everywhere. Dozens of small, furry creatures are scurrying about, chirping and squeaking with an almost comical urgency. They are guinea pigs, or kai, as they're called here. They scurry around your feet, utterly unafraid, their constant, high-pitched chatter forming a kind of organic white noise. It's a slightly surreal welcome party. A woman looks up from the fire, her face kind. She is stirring a clay pot that sends a delicious-smelling steam into the air. She nods to you and your guide, a silent greeting that feels more welcoming than 1,000 words. She is family to your guide, you presume, though in this society, the lines are beautifully blurred. The entire village operates as an elu, an extended family or community unit that works the land together, shares its resources, and cares for its own. This is a fundamental, widely accepted fact of Inca life. Your primary identity is not as an individual, but as a member of your elu. The food she is cooking, the wool in your blankets, the very stones of this house, they belong, in a sense, to everyone. It's a form of collectivism, so deeply ingrained, it's as natural as breathing. You think of the fierce territorialism of your own neighborhood, the arguments over fences and property lines, and it feels a world away. Asterisk, the quirky, lesser-known detail, of course, continues to squeak and scurry around your ankles. These guinea pigs are not just pets. They are a crucial source of protein. They are kept indoors where they stay warm, clean, and well fed on kitchen scraps, and are then harvested for meals, especially on ceremonial occasions. You watch one particularly plump kai nibble on a discarded vegetable leaf, and you feel a strange mix of endearment and slight dread. It's a perfectly sensible, sustainable system of micro-livestock. But your 21st century brain, which sees these animals as fluffy companions for children, is having a hard time rebooting. The constant, cheerful squeaking is both adorable and vaguely menacing. A soundtrack to a dinner you're not entirely prepared for. Asterisk, as you settle onto one of the warm blankets, the woman ladles some of the stew into a simple clay bowl and hands it to you. It's thick and hearty, filled with potatoes, quinoa, and maize. It warms you from the inside out, a simple, profound comfort. Through the doorway, you can see the life of the village winding down. A man walks past with a llama, its soft, padded feet nearly silent on the stone path. Two children chase each other, their laughter echoing for a moment before a mother's gentle voice calls them inside. And this peaceful, orderly scene gives rise to a question historians still quietly ponder. What was the trade-off for all this stability? In a society so meticulously organized, where the state assigned you your work, your social standing, and even sometimes your spouse, how much room was there for personal ambition or dissent? Could a young man who was supposed to be a stonemason decide he'd rather be a weaver? Could a family simply pack up and move to a different elu if they didn't get along with their neighbors? The empire was a masterpiece of social engineering, but the lack of personal written records means we can only guess at the quiet, internal lives of the millions who lived within its rigid, yet protective, framework. Asterisk, asterisk. The night in the Andes is a profound and absolute thing. There is no ambient city glow, no distant hum of traffic. The darkness is so complete it feels like a soft, heavy blanket, and the silence is broken only by the occasional gust of wind and the gentle, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping family around you. You drift in a comfortable, dreamless state, your body finally surrendering to the altitude and the day's long walk. You are woken not by a sound, but by a subtle shift in the light. A cool, gray pre-dawn glow is filtering through the doorway, painting the interior of the hut in soft shades of charcoal and silver. The fire is just a bed of glowing orange embers. The guinea pigs are silent. It is the quietest moment of the day, a pause between the darkness of night and the business of morning. Asterisk, your elderly guide is already awake. He sits cross-legged near the doorway, not moving, simply watching the world come to light. He sees you stirring and gives you a small, slow smile. He gestures with his head, an invitation to join him. You slip out from under the warm wool and pad softly across the cold stone floor. The air outside is shockingly crisp, a clean, sharp cold that makes your lungs tingle. You pull your cloak tighter around you and sit beside him on the stone stoop. Your back against the smooth, solid wall of the hut. The village is still asleep. The mountains across the valley are just beginning to emerge from the gloom. their peaks catching the very first faint rays of an unseen sun. Asterisk, a figure emerges from a hut a little further down the path. He is a man of middle age, his face serious and composed. He carries himself with an air of quiet importance, but there is no arrogance in his posture. He is dressed simply, but around his head is a woven band of intricate design, and tucked into it are several long, colorful feathers. He holds in his hands the object you saw the Chasqui carrying the night before, a quipu. It dangles from his fingers, a cascade of colored strings, and tiny, precise knots. This man, your guide whispers to you in a low voice, is the Quipu, the keeper of the knots, the talking strings librarian. He is the village accountant, historian, and administrator, all rolled into one. His job is to read, create, and maintain the community's official records. In an empire without a single stroke of ink, this man is the hard drive. The Quipu Kameak asterisk walks to the center of the small village plaza, a flat open space between the huts. He sits on a smooth flat stone and lays the quipu out across his lap, its many colored cords fanning out like a complex root system. It's a widely accepted historical fact that these officials were a specialized, highly trained class. They underwent rigorous training from a young age to memorize the meanings of the knots, the colors, and the arrangements of the strings. A mistake in tying or reading a quipu could mean the difference between a village paying the correct amount of maize in tribute and being accused of treasonous tax evasion. The fate of his entire elu quite literally hangs on these threads. You can see the focused intensity in his face as he runs his fingers over the knots, his lips moving slightly, as if he is not just counting, but listening. Asterisk, he is not just a bookkeeper. One of the more peculiar, lesser-known details of his role is that he was also a performer of sorts. During community gatherings, he would hold up the quipu and read from it, recounting histories, genealogies, or census data to the assembled villagers. He was a data narrator, translating the tactile information of the knots into a spoken story that reinforced the community's identity and its place within the larger empire. It was a fusion of spreadsheet and epic poem, a public recitation of the village's vital statistics. You can almost imagine the scene. The whole village gathered, listening intently as he declares how many bags of potatoes are in the communal storehouse, or recounts the heroic deeds of an ancestor from 3 generations past, all by feeling a few carefully tied loops in a piece of string. Asterisk, as you sit there, watching him in the quiet dawn, you're struck by the sheer alienness of this system. We are so accustomed to information being flat, visual, and external, written on a page or displayed on a screen. The quipu is different. It's three-dimensional, tactile, and deeply personal. And this brings up a profound question that still divides experts. Was there a standardized empire-wide code for the quipu? We know the number system, based on knots in a decimal arrangement, was consistent. But what about the colors? Did a yellow cord always mean gold? Or maize? Did a red cord always signify a military matter? Or was there a regional dialect of knots, where a Quipu Kameok from the northern provinces might struggle to read a quipu from the south? The Spanish, in their quest to erase indigenous knowledge systems, destroyed thousands of these records, leaving us with only a few hundred survivors and a tantalizingly incomplete dictionary. We see the strings, but the full language they spoke remains just out of reach, a library of silent, whispering knots. Asterisk, the sun has now crested the mountain opposite, and the first direct rays of light spill into the village. The Quipu Kameok carefully gathers the cords of his quipu, loops them together, and tucks the bundles safely into a bag at his side. The village is beginning to stir. Doors are opening. The smell of a newly kindled fire drifts on the air. The man who holds the entire village's memory in a bag of strings stands up and walks away. Just another man heading off to begin his day. The world's quietest audit is complete. Asterisk, curiosity, you discover. is a powerful motivator. The brief glimpse of the Quipu Kameak and his mysterious bundle of strings has captivated you. After a simple morning meal of toasted quinoa and a hot, sweet herbal tea, you find the courage to ask your guide if you can learn more. He seems pleased by your interest, a small twinkle in his eye. He leads you not to the official's hut, but to a quieter dwelling on the edge of the village. Inside, an old woman sits before a simple backstrap loom, her fingers a blur as they manipulate brightly colored threads, weaving a complex geometric pattern into a strip of cloth. The air in the room is filled with the clean lanolin scent of wool and the faint, earthy smell of natural dyes. This, your guide explains, is where the Quipu truly begins. The woman pays you little mind, her focus entirely on her work. Your guide picks up a loose bundle of dyed yarn, letting the vibrant strands run through his fingers. He explains that the physical makeup of a Quipu is as important as the knots tied into it. The strings were almost always spun from the wool of alpacas or llamas, animals sacred to the Andean people. It's a well-established historical fact that the Inca textile industry was incredibly sophisticated, producing cloth of such a fine weave that the first Spanish conquistadors mistook it for silk. This same level of care and expertise was applied to the creation of the cords for a quipu. A string destined for an official imperial record had to be perfectly spun, with a consistent thickness and a high tensile strength, to ensure it would last for years without fraying or breaking. You look at the simple spindle resting in a bowl beside the weaver and realize it's a tool as crucial to the empire's administration as any pen or printing press. Your guide holds up two different colored strings. One, a deep, rich crimson, the other, a vibrant, sunny yellow. He explains that the colors are a primary layer of information, while the exact meanings are now a source of endless debate. The general consensus is that colors were mnemonic devices, categories for the data that would be knotted into them. Red might signify soldiers or warfare. Yellow could represent gold or maize. White might mean silver or peace. A single Quipu could contain dozens of different colored cords, each one representing a different class of item being counted. This is where it gets wonderfully, dizzyingly complex. Sometimes, the colors were combined. A red string twisted together with a yellow one might not mean soldiers and gold, but something entirely new. Perhaps the cost of a military campaign. It's a beautifully organic system of data visualization, like a three-dimensional pie chart spun from wool. Now, for the truly quirky lesser-known detail. The kind of thing that makes you appreciate the sheer cleverness of this lost world. Your guide points to the different textures of the wool in the basket. Some are soft and fine, that's alpaca. Others are coarser, more utilitarian. He tells you that some historians believe the very material of the string could carry meaning. A record of a sacred offering to the gods might be recorded on a cord of the finest, softest white alpaca wool, while a mundane inventory of potatoes might be knotted onto a rougher, brown llama string. It's a theory, not a proven fact, but it makes a wonderful kind of sense. It adds another layer of sensory information to the record. An official wouldn't even need to look at the knots. He could literally feel the importance of the data he was holding. It's like getting a tax bill printed on cheap, scratchy paper and a wedding invitation on thick, luxurious cardstock. The medium is part of the message. You watch the old weaver, her fingers still flying. She's not just making cloth. She's part of the empire's vast information supply chain. Her choice of dye, her skill in spinning, her knowledge of woolsall, of these are essential prerequisites for the Quipu's work. And this leads to another one of those fascinating open questions. Who decided on the colors? Was there a central dye master? Holding the single, unknotted blue cord in your hand, you follow your guide back out into the bright mountain sunshine. The village is now fully awake. The air hums with a quiet industry, the rhythmic thud of someone grinding grain, the soft bleating of llamas being led to pasture, the distant laughter of children. Your guide leads you back to the central plaza, where the Quipu is now sitting with two younger men, his apprentices. He has his primary Quipu spread across his lap again, and he is pointing to specific clusters of knots, his voice a low, patient murmur. This is the classroom. Asterisk. Your guide finds a spot on a low stone wall nearby, a respectful distance away, and motions for you to sit. He doesn't want to interrupt the lesson, but he can see the question in your eyes. With the blue cord you're still holding, he begins to show you the basics, the simple grammar of the knots. He explains that the Inca, like many ancient cultures, used a decimal system based in way of counting, just like we do. It's the one part of the Quipu code that we can read with absolute 100% certainty, a widely accepted historical fact that forms the bedrock of all Quipu studies. The placement and style of the knots on a string determined their value. Asterisk. He takes the blue cord and, near the very bottom, ties a series of simple, tight overhand knots. He ties 8 of them, one on top of the other, forming a thick, dense cluster. These are the ones, he says, pointing to the cluster, 1 through 9. Further up the string, he ties a single, simple knot. These are the 10s. He ties 4 of them, each one distinct and separate. He moves higher still and ties another single knot, the 100s, and even higher, a final, single knot, the 1000s. He hands the string back to you. By reading the knots from top to bottom, you can easily sound out the number, 1148. It's elegant, intuitive, and surprisingly simple. You've just read your first line of Inca data. It's a quiet, thrilling moment. Like deciphering your first word in a lost language. Your guide then points toward the Quipu's own Quipu asterisk. You can see now that some of the knots are different. This is where the lesser-known quirky details come in. He explains that for the number 1, they often used a special kind of knot, a figure 8, knot which looked different from the standard overhand knots used for numbers 2 through 9. Why? Perhaps it was for clarity, to make the most common digits stand out and prevent errors in reading. Or maybe it was just an aesthetic choice, a bit of mathematical flair. He also shows you a long knot, where a single knot is made with multiple turns of the cord, a 3-turn long knot representing the number 3, a 5-turn knot for 5, and so on. This was an alternative way to represent the digits 1 through 9, often used in the 1's position at the bottom of the string. It was a more compact, efficient way of tying, a kind of numerical shorthand. You realize this isn't just counting, this is typography. They had different fonts for their numbers. Asterisk. You look back at the master and his students. One of the apprentices is holding his own small, practice Quipu, and he seems to be struggling. His fingers clumsy as he tries to form a perfect long knot. The Quipu patiently corrects him, guiding his fingers, tightening the loop just so. The boy sighs in frustration. It's a timeless scene, the universal struggle of a student trying to satisfy a demanding teacher, and it makes you wonder about the learning process. How long did it take to become proficient? Was it a lifetime of study? Historians continue to debate the nature of Quipu education. Was it a formal schooling system, with dedicated academies for training these imperial accountants? Or was it a more informal apprenticeship, passed down from father to son, within specific families who held the hereditary title of Quipu? The Spanish chroniclers mention that the most skilled masters were held in incredibly high esteem, their memories revered as infallible living archives. But how they attained that mastery is another detail lost in the smoke of the conquest. Asterisk. As the lesson continues, the Quipu picks up a smaller, subsidiary cord that hangs from one of the main strings of his Quipu. This smaller cord has its own knots, which seem to modify or add detail to the number on the main cord. It's like a footnote or an addendum. For example, if the main cord recorded a total of 500 potatoes, a subsidiary cord might be attached to it with knots indicating that 20 of those potatoes were spoiled. The system allowed for nested information, 4 layers of detail and exceptions. It was a spreadsheet that could grow branches. It's a level of complexity you hadn't imagined. You looked down at the simple number you created on your single blue cord, 1,148. You realize with a touch of humility that you've learned the equivalent of the letter A, the full, branching, color-coded, multi-textured language of the Quipu still stretches out before you, a beautiful and intricate puzzle. For now, you just hold your little blue string, a single data point in a vast and silent network, asterisk. You spend the rest of the morning watching the Quipu and his apprentices, mesmerized by the quiet dance of their fingers. You can now recognize the different types of knots, the clusters for the ones, the spaced-out knots for the tens and hundreds. You understand, on a fundamental level, how this system can record a census of a village, an inventory of a storehouse, or the tribute owed to the Sapa Inca in Cusco. It is a brilliant, tactile system for managing the empire's resources. But as you watch the master run his fingers over a particularly complex section of his Quipu, a cascade of dozens of multicolored strings, you can't shake a bigger, more tantalizing question. Is that all there is? Numbers? Or can these strings do more? Can they whisper stories? This is the great mystery of the narrative, Quipu, asterisk, the single most debated and romantic theory in Andean studies. It's the idea that some Quipus were not just for accounting, but were not numerical, capable of recording histories, myths, laws, and even poetry. Your guide, sensing your deepening curiosity, sits beside you again on the stone wall. He lowers his voice, as if sharing a secret. He tells you that some of the Spanish chroniclers, the very priests and soldiers who helped dismantle the empire, wrote of Inca record keepers who could read stories from the strings as easily as a European could read a book. They claimed that the arrangement of colors, the direction of the spin of the yarn S-twist or Z, and perhaps even the symbolic meaning of the knots themselves, could encode abstract ideas. Asterisk. This is where you move from widely accepted fact into the thrilling realm of historical possibility. The theory suggests that a Quipu could function as a complex mnemonic device. The knots wouldn't spell out words phonetically, but would instead act as prompts, triggering a memorized passage of a story or a specific line of a poem. A red cord with a figure 8 knot might not mean one soldier, but could be the trigger for the first verse of an epic poem about the founding of the Inca dynasty. A black cord, traditionally associated with illness and death, might be the cue for a story about a great plague. In this model, the Quipu wasn't just a reader. He was a bard, a trained oral historian who used the Quipu as his sheet music, a physical guide to the vast, unwritten library stored in his memory. Asterisk, as you ponder this, a lesser-known, wonderfully quirky detail emerges. In a few rare, surviving colonial-era documents, indigenous writers, now using the Latin alphabet, drew pictures of their ancestors holding Quipu. Next to these drawings, they wrote out the genealogies or histories that the Quipu supposedly represented. These documents are like a potential Rosetta Stone for the narrative Quipu, a tantalizingly close link between the strings and the stories they might tell. Researchers have spent decades trying to correlate the patterns in these specific illustrated Quipus with the accompanying written text. They look for repetitions, for unique markers, for any sign of a non-numerical code. It's a frustrating, painstaking process, like trying to learn a language from a single, tattered page of a dictionary. You look over at the Quipu asterisk. He has paused his lesson and is now just looking at his Quipu, a distant, contemplative expression on his face. He's not counting. He seems to be remembering. The sight of him, so deeply connected to this object, makes the theory of narrative knots feel entirely plausible. And yet, this is where the great debate still rages among academics. Many historians argue that the evidence is just too thin, that the Spanish chroniclers misunderstood what they were seeing, or that the idea of storytelling knots is a romantic, modern projection. They argue that the Quipu was a brilliantly effective accounting tool, and that we don't need to embellish its function. They believe the histories and myths were preserved through a purely oral tradition, and the Quipu was simply used to keep the numbers straight. Who is right? Did the Incas have a unique form of three-dimensional literature that was systematically destroyed? Or are we chasing a beautiful phantom, trying to make these incredible objects into something they were never meant to be? The answer, for now, remains tangled in the strings themselves. The apprentices have started practicing again, their fingers fumbling to replicate a knot their master just showed them. Later that afternoon, you witness the Quipu system in action, and it is a masterpiece of quiet, mundane efficiency. The abstract theories of storytelling knots fade into the background, replaced by the simple, practical reality of managing an empire. Two men from the village arrive in the central plaza, guiding a train of 6 llamas. The animals are laden with large, tightly woven sacks. They have just returned from a lower, warmer valley, a journey of several days, where they traded the high-altitude potatoes and fine alpaca wool of your village for maize and dried chili peppers. It is an act of commerce, of resource management, that is happening simultaneously in thousands of villages all across the Andes, and it all needs to be recorded. The Quipu Kaimak leaves his apprentices and approaches the men. There is no loud haggling, no dramatic marketplace shouting. This is not a negotiation. It is a declaration. The head of the trading party formally reports his return, and the Quipu Kaimak listens, his face impassive. He is the state's auditor, the local representative of the vast imperial bureaucracy. He walks over to the llamas and, with a practiced hand, checks the contents of one of the sacks, pulling out a handful of golden maize kernels. He nods, satisfied with the quality. This scene, in its calm and orderly nature, demonstrates a widely accepted historical fact. The Inca economy was not a free market system. It was a centrally planned, command economy, a vast system of reciprocal obligation and state-run redistribution. The Sapa Inca, in theory, owned everything: the land, the resources, the people. In return, the state provided security, infrastructure like the roads and storehouses, and famine relief. This trade was not for personal profit. It was to fulfill the village's production quota and to ensure the communal storehouses were full. The Quipu Kaimak returns to his seat and picks up a new, mostly blank Quipu. It consists of a thick primary cord with several thin, undyed strings hanging from it, ready for data entry. The trader calls out the numbers: 80 kilograms of maize, 10 kilograms of dried chilies. The Quipu Kaimak's fingers fly. He takes a yellow cord maize and knots the number 80 into it. He takes a red cord chilies and knots the number 10. He then takes another cord, perhaps a brown one representing the village's wool supply, and ties knots to indicate how much wool was traded away. He is updating the empire's inventory in real time. The llamas, having shed their burdens, stand by patiently, occasionally chewing their cud with an air of profound indifference. They are the delivery trucks of this operation, and they seem entirely unimpressed by the accounting procedures. Now for a wonderfully quirky, lesser-known detail of this immense system. The empire was obsessed with accounting for everything, not just goods, but also time and labor. Every able-bodied person in the empire owed a form of labor tax to the state, known as the mita. You might be called upon to serve in the army, build a section of road, or work on a state-owned farm for a portion of the year. The Quipu Kaimak had to keep track of this too. He would have a Quipu dedicated to the households in his ilu, with strings representing the people in each family, and knots indicating who had fulfilled their mita obligation for the year and who was still due to serve. It was a system of time tracking on a colossal scale. You imagine him having to make a knot for Pachacuti's son-in-law, 20 days of road maintenance. Completed. a level of bureaucratic detail that feels both deeply impressive and faintly terrifying. Asterisk, as you watch this silent, efficient transaction, you realize the genius of the Quipu is not just in what it records, but in what it prevents. It prevents corruption. A local official can't easily skim a few sacks of maize off the top when a knotted record of the exact amount is sent by Chasqui runner to a regional administrator, and perhaps even onward to the central archives in Cusco. The system had checks and balances, and this is where historians are still piecing together the puzzle. How were these records audited? We know that higher-ranking officials, inspectors loyal only to the Sapa Inca, would periodically tour the provinces. Did they carry master quipus with them, comparing the records held in a local village with the totals expected by the central government? Imagine the tension of that moment. An inspector from the capital arriving unannounced, asking the local Quipu Kamayok to hand over his records for review. It was a system that demanded absolute accuracy, where a single misplaced knot could have dire consequences. The quiet life of this village administrator was likely punctuated by moments of extreme professional stress. Asterisk, the llamas are unladen now, their sacks carried off to the communal storehouse, a large, well-ventilated stone building set a little apart from the village. The traders are being welcomed by their families. The Quipu Kamiak makes one final, careful knot on his new Quipu, double-checking his work. He then rolls it up with the calm satisfaction of a job well done. The empire is, in this tiny way, a little more orderly than it was an hour ago. The vast, silent inventory has been updated. The balance sheet of the Andes has been reconciled, not with the scratch of a pen, but with the soft, decisive tightening of a woolen knot. Asterisk, as evening begins to settle once more, tinting the sky with soft hues of lavender and rose. A different kind of energy fills the village. The day's labor is done. The llamas are settled, the storehouse is secured, and the maize has been accounted for. Now, the focus shifts from the practical to the sacred. Your guide leads you to a small, open-fronted structure, more of a shrine than a temple, that sits on a small rise overlooking the village. It is simple, built of the same fieldstone as the houses, but the stones are chosen and fitted with a greater, more deliberate care. Inside, in a small niche, are several small, smooth stones and a few brightly colored feathers. This is a waka, a sacred place where the community can connect with the spiritual forces that animate their world. Asterisk, an older man, not the Quipakamiak, but a village elder with the gravitas of a priest, is preparing a small offering. A woman brings him a beautifully woven cloth, which he lays carefully on the ground before the niche. On top of it, she places a small pile of perfect coca leaves, a carved wooden cup containing chicha, a fermented maize beer, and two tiny, exquisitely carved llama figurines, one of gold and one of silver. These offerings are not just for a single, all-powerful god, but for the complex web of deities and spirits that inhabit the Inca cosmos. This is a widely understood fact of Andean religion. It was deeply animistic. Everything had a spirit: the mountains Apis, the earth mother Pachamama, the sun Inti, the moon, the rivers, even unusual rock formations. Life was a constant negotiation, a reciprocal relationship with these powerful, non-human entities. This small ceremony is a gesture of Ani, of reciprocity, a way of saying thank you and maintaining balance in the universe. Asterisk, the elder begins a low, rhythmic chant in Quechua. It's a hypnotic, melodic sound that seems to blend with the whispering of the wind, and then you see it. He is not alone in his duties. The Quipu Kameak, the man of numbers and records, has joined him. He stands silently to the side, and in his hands, he holds a special Quipu. It is different from the ones you've seen before. It is smaller, and its strings are made almost entirely of brilliant white and shimmering golden yellow wool, with threads of crimson woven through them. It seems less like a ledger, and more like a piece of jewelry. As the elder chants, the Quipu slowly, deliberately, ties a single, complex knot into one of the white cords. This is a fascinating and much debated aspect of the Quipu's asterisk function, a lesser-known detail that blurs the line between administration and religion. Some Spanish chroniclers reported that quipus were used to keep track of sacred rituals, to record the calendar of religious festivals, and even to document the sacrifices and offerings made to each waka. The knot the Quipu is tying may not represent a number, but a completed ritual. He is creating a permanent, physical record of the village's spiritual obligations being met. It's a receipt for a prayer. He is, in a very real sense, doing the gods' accounting. The golden llama, the sacred chicha, the perfect coca leaves, they are all logged, their spiritual value recorded in a knot for future reference. Asterisk, you watch this quiet, solemn act, and a question, one that archaeologists and ethnohistorians still grapple with, comes to mind. How deeply intertwined were the state religion and the state bureaucracy? Were they two sides of the same coin? We know the Sapa Inca was considered a living god, a direct descendant of the sun god Inti. So, was paying your labor tax, the meta, an act of civic duty, or an act of religious devotion? Was the Quipu in his dual role of tracking both maize and ceremonies, a civil servant, or a kind of priest? The Western mind loves to separate the secular from the sacred, to put administration in one box and religion in another. But here, in this small stone shrine, the two seem to be woven together as tightly as the threads in the Quipu itself. The empire's stability may have relied not just on its roads and its armies, but on this meticulous, spiritual bookkeeping. Asterisk. The last of the sun's light has bled from the sky, and the world has returned to that deep, velvety darkness you are beginning to recognize as the true color of the Andean night. The stars are starting to appear, not as shy scattered twinkles, but as a brilliant, dense spill of diamonds across the heavens. The air is cold now, a penetrating chill that makes you grateful for the thick alpaca wool of your cloak. The village is quiet again. The sounds of the day replaced by the soft glow of fires from within the huts and the low murmur of conversations. There is no town crier, no evening news, just the simple, human rhythm of a community settling down for the night. Asterisk. You find a sheltered spot on the same stone wall you sat on this morning, pulling your knees to your chest for warmth. You're not ready for sleep just yet. You want to simply sit and absorb the feeling of this place, to let the immense silence of the mountains seep into your bones. Your guide, understanding without a word, sits with you for a moment before nodding and retreating to the warmth of his family's hut, leaving you to your thoughts. And it's in this profound quiet that you begin to notice the sounds you couldn't hear before. The high, thin whistle of the wind as it curls around the thatched eaves of the huts. The distant, lonely cry of a night bird, and something else. A sound so faint and ethereal, you're not sure at first if you're imagining it. Asterisk, it is music, a slow, haunting melody played on a flute. The notes are breathy and melancholic, seeming to rise from the very stones of the village and drift away into the vast, empty darkness. It's a simple tune, repeating a short, mournful phrase, but it is filled with a sense of immense space and ancient longing. You scan the village, trying to find its source, and see a lone figure silhouetted against the dying embers of an outdoor fire pit. It is one of the young men you saw earlier, one of the Quipu apprentices. After a day spent wrestling with the rigid logic of numbers and knots, he is now creating something purely beautiful and abstract. He is playing a quena asterisk, a traditional Andean flute. It's a simple instrument, typically made from bone or bamboo, with a notched end rather than a mouthpiece. It's a widely known fact that this instrument, in various forms, has been played in these mountains for thousands of years, long before the Inca built their empire. Its distinctive, breathy sound is considered by many to be the quintessential voice of the Andes. The music it produces is not designed for dancing or celebration. It is introspective, contemplative, music made for staring into a fire and pondering the vastness of the cosmos. It feels less like a performance and more like a private meditation that you are privileged to overhear. Asterisk, as you listen, you notice a quirky, lesser-known detail about the sound itself. The melody seems to hang in the thin, high-altitude air for an extra moment before dissipating. The notes have a crystalline clarity that you've never heard from a flute in the dense, humid air of the lowlands. The physics of the atmosphere here changes the very character of the music. The sound waves travel differently, creating a natural, subtle echo that makes the lone instrument sound fuller, richer, as if the mountains themselves are humming along in quiet harmony. The young man plays a note, and for a split second, the valley holds it, cradles it, before letting it go. It's an acoustic property of the environment that the Andean people have understood and incorporated into their music for millennia. Asterisk, the melody shifts slightly, becoming a little more complex. And it makes you wonder, what is the relationship between this music and the knotted strings the young man spent his day studying? This is a question that ventures into pure speculation, but it's a beautiful one to consider. Did the patterns of the Quipu influence musical composition? Could a sequence of knots, a pattern of numbers representing, say, a harvest yield over 10 years be translated into a musical phrase, its rises and falls mirroring the ebb and flow of the data? Could a musician play the census? It's a romantic, almost fantastical idea. But in a culture that encoded so much information into tactile patterns, it doesn't seem entirely impossible. Perhaps the same part of the brain that could see the beauty in a perfectly balanced ledger could also hear the logic in a perfectly constructed melody. The two systems, one for numbers and one for notes, might be more deeply connected than we can ever know. Asterisk, the young man plays for a few more minutes, his simple song weaving a spell of profound peace over the sleeping village. He doesn't play for an audience, for applause, or for any reason other than the simple, human need to fill the immense silence with a small, fragile sliver of beauty. The final note hangs in the cold, clear air and then fades into nothing. The silence that follows feels different. It's no longer empty, but resonant, still vibrating with the ghost of the melody. The musician stands, stretches, and disappears back into the warmth of his hut. The concert is over. You are alone again with the wind and the stars, but you feel a sense of deep, unshakable calm. You have paused your journey of discovery, of history and facts, to simply be present, to listen to the quiet, haunting soul of this ancient world. Asterisk, asterisk, the next morning, you wake with the haunting melody of the quina still echoing faintly in your mind. The sun is once again pouring its brilliant, high-altitude light into the valley, and the village is already a hive of quiet activity. Today, you are not an observer of data and bureaucracy, but a participant in the most fundamental rhythm of life, the sharing of food. Your guide's family invites you to join them for the main meal of the day, which is taken not at noon, but in the morning, to fuel the hard physical labor that lies ahead. There is no dining table, no formal seating. You all simply gather on woven blankets, spread on the floor. Around the central hearth, a small, intimate circle of warmth and companionship. Asterisk, the woman who greeted you on your first night is the quiet, efficient center of this universe. She moves with an economy of motion, tending to a variety of clay pots that are simmering and steaming over the fire. The air is thick with delicious, unfamiliar smells, nutty, earthy, and slightly spicy. She hands you a shallow clay bowl, and it is almost too hot to hold. It is filled with a thick, porridge-like stew, and your first spoonful is a revelation. The primary flavor is nutty and slightly savory. This, your guide explains, is quinoa, the ancient superfood of the Andes. It's a widely accepted historical fact that quinoa, along with potatoes and maize, formed the trinity of the Inca diet. It is a complete protein, perfectly adapted to grow in the harsh conditions of these high mountain slopes. And it has sustained civilization here for at least 5,000 years. You've had quinoa back home, of course, from a sterile box in a health food store, but it has never tasted like this creamy rich and humming with the flavor of the wood smoke it was cooked over. Asterisk alongside the quinoa, there are other bowls to be shared. One contains small, colorful potatoes that have been freeze-dried into a substance called tuna. The process is ingenious. The potatoes are left out in the freezing night air, then trampled by foot during the day to squeeze out the moisture, a cycle that is repeated for several days. The result is a light, starchy morsel that is almost completely dehydrated and can be stored for years. A vital insurance against famine. The taste is unusual, a concentrated, earthy potato flavor with a slightly spongy texture. Another bowl contains what looks like giant corn kernels, toasted until they are crunchy and golden. This is canca, a simple, addictive snack. You eat with your hands, or with a simple carved wooden spoon. The flavors and textures, a constant source of gentle surprise. Asterisk now for the quirky, lesser-known detail that adds a little kick to the meal. The woman passes you a small stone bowl filled with a coarse, reddish powder. Your guide encourages you to sprinkle a little on your quinoa. You do, and a wave of gentle, smoky heat blossoms on your tongue. It's not the sharp, aggressive fire of a habanero, but a deep, warming spice. This is powder made from the rocado pepper, a local variety of chile that is unique to the Andes. What makes it so interesting is that it's one of the few domesticated pepper species that can tolerate the cold mountain climate, while the rest of the world's peppers are sun-worshipping tropical plants. The hardy little rocado has adapted to these chilly slopes, providing a welcome spark of heat in a diet that is otherwise dominated by mild, starchy flavors. It's a small but vital part of the local cuisine, a testament to the agricultural ingenuity of the people who learned to cultivate a little bit of fire in a world of ice. Asterisk, as you eat, you look at the faces around you. The meal is eaten in a comfortable, companionable silence. The focus is on the food, on the simple, profound act of refueling the body, and this raises a quiet, fascinating question for historians of daily life. What was the etiquette of an Inca meal? Were there specific customs or rituals associated with eating? Did they say a quiet prayer of thanks to Pachamama before the first bite? Or certain foods reserved for men, women, or children? Our knowledge of the grand sweep of Inca history of kings and conquests and golden temples is vast, but our understanding of these small, intimate, daily moments is frustratingly incomplete. The Spanish chroniclers were far more interested in describing battles and religious ceremonies than in noting the proper way to share a bowl of chuno, the simple, human details. Fueled by the hearty meal and the warm sense of belonging, you feel a renewed energy. You are ready to walk again, to see what lies beyond the familiar confines of the village. Your guide seems to anticipate this, and after the morning chores are done, he motions for you to follow him. You leave the village behind, climbing a steep but well-maintained stone path that winds its way up the side of the mountain. The air gets even thinner, the sun even brighter. After about an hour of steady climbing, you round a massive granite outcrop, and you stop dead in your tracks, breathless for a reason that has nothing to do with the altitude. Asterisk, before you is a wall. But that simple word is a profound injustice to what you're seeing. It is a section of retaining wall, part of a massive agricultural terrace, and it is built from enormous, irregular polygonal stones. Some of these granite blocks are the size of a small car, and they are fitted together with such astonishing hair-splitting precision that you cannot slip a blade of grass between them. There is no mortar. The wall holds itself together through the sheer perfection of its construction, the stones interlocking like the pieces of a colossal, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The surfaces are not flat. They are gently curved and pillowed, giving the wall an organic, almost soft appearance. despite its incredible mass. You run your hand over the join between two massive stones, tracing the impossibly fine line, and you feel a sense of awe that borders on disbelief. Asterisk, this is, of course, the signature architectural style of the Inca Empire. It is a universally known and celebrated historical fact that Inca stonemasons were masters of their craft, creating structures that have withstood centuries of earthquakes in one of the world's most seismically active regions. While other civilizations built with uniform bricks or cut blocks in straight lines, the Inca embraced the natural, irregular shapes of the stones they quarried. They would painstakingly carve and shape each block to fit perfectly against its neighbors, a process that must have required an incredible amount of time, patience, and a form of spatial reasoning that is difficult for us to even comprehend. You look at this wall, a piece of simple infrastructure on a remote mountainside, and it possesses more artistry and technical genius than many famous monuments. Asterisk, you walk along the base of the wall, marveling at the sheer labor involved. This is where a quirky and frankly mind-boggling detail comes into play. The Inca had no iron or steel tools. Their most advanced metallurgical technology was bronze. So how did they achieve this level of precision on stone as hard as granite? The most likely answer is a combination of bronze chisels, which would have blunted quickly, and a great deal of patient, laborious abrasion. They would use harder river cobblestones to slowly, painstakingly grind, sand, and polish the surfaces of the larger blocks, constantly testing the fit, removing the stone, grinding a little more, and placing it back. Imagine the process. A team of men spending weeks, maybe months, on a single join, slowly wearing down the rock by hand until the fit was airtight. It wasn't a feat of advanced technology, but of immense, almost unimaginable human perseverance. It's a humbling thought. The secret ingredient wasn't a lost tool. It was time. Asterisk, as you stand there, feeling dwarfed by this monument to patience, you're confronted with one of the most persistent and debated questions in Andean archaeology. How did they plan it? In a world without writing, how did they create the blueprints for these complex, irregular structures? An architect today would use sophisticated computer-aided design CAD software to model such a wall. How did an Inca foreman communicate the exact, unique shape of a required stone to the quarrymen, who might be miles away? Some historians propose they used small-scale models, perhaps made of clay or wood, to plan the interlocking patterns. Others suggest a system of templates, or perhaps a complex gestural language. And then, of course, there's the keep. Could a series of knotted strings somehow encode the complex three-dimensional measurements and angles needed for a specific stone? Could a Quipu Kameak hand a messenger a Quipu that essentially said, "We need a seven-sided stone, approximately 2 meters high, with the following angles on each face"? It seems like a stretch for a system we primarily understand as numerical. But the sheer organizational challenge of this type of construction makes you wonder if the knots held even more secrets than we imagine. Asterisk, you lean your back against the cool, solid stone of the wall. It feels ancient and alive. Below you, the village is a small, tidy cluster of dots in the immense green valley. You see the Alu, the community, working together in the fields, and you realize this wall was not built by a single genius architect or a team of enslaved workers. It was almost certainly built by the people of this very region as part of their meta, their labor service to the state. It was a communal effort, a physical expression of their collective identity. This wall is not just a feat of engineering. It is a monument to a society that knew how to work together, how to fit individual efforts into a greater, stronger whole, just as they fitted these stones. The puzzle of the mortarless walls is not just about tools and techniques. It's about understanding the social machinery that could mobilize thousands of people to create something so perfect, so enduring, so utterly and breathtakingly beautiful. As you make your way back down the mountain path, the immense, solid permanence of the stone wall stays with you. It feels eternal, a structure that will stand for another 1,000 years. But as you re-enter the village, your attention is drawn back to the Quipu. He is sitting in the late afternoon sun, his back against the warm wall of his hut, with his 2 young apprentices. He is not teaching them knots. Instead, he is talking. His voice is low and steady, and the boys are listening with a rapt, almost sacred intensity. He holds a quipu in his lap, but he is not looking at it. His eyes are distant, focused on a memory. He is telling them a story. You sit at a respectful distance, not wanting to intrude, but unable to pull yourself away. You cannot understand the words of the Quechua, but you can understand the cadence of a story being told. You can hear the rhythm of the narrative, the pauses for dramatic effect, the gentle rise and fall of his voice as he describes people and events. Every so often, he will gesture to a specific colored cord on the quipu, tapping a cluster of knots, and the boy's eyes will follow his finger, cementing a connection between the spoken word and the physical object. You are witnessing the heart of the entire system, the fragile, beautiful core upon which the entire Inca world of knowledge was built. You realize that this entire sophisticated system of data management, history, and administration depends entirely on the memories of a few trained individuals. This is a crucial, often overlooked fact about the quipu. It was not a standalone document. A quipu without its quipu comiak was just a collection of colored strings. The knots could provide the numbers, the hard data, but the context, the story behind the numbers, the meaning that was all stored in the meticulously trained mind of its keeper. The strings were the framework, the skeleton, but the living flesh of the information was pure, organic human memory. The library of the Inca Empire was not a building full of books. It was a guild of living librarians, each one a walking, talking archive. This leads to a fascinatingly precarious detail about the transmission of knowledge. What happened when a Quipu Kamaya grew old? The scene before you is the answer. He had to pass on his knowledge, his entire mental archive, to his successors. This wasn't a matter of handing over a set of books to be studied. It was a long, slow, painstaking process of oral transmission, of storytelling, of recitation and repetition, until the apprentices had internalized not just the techniques of tying and reading, but the vast body of unwritten lore that went with each specific keep. They had to memorize which chord referred to which family's genealogy, which knot represented a specific event in a past ruler's reign, which color combination signified a particular myth. It must have been an apprenticeship of decades, a complete merging of the master's mind with the students. The data transfer was a Vulcan mind meld, accomplished over years of quiet afternoons, just like this one. And this fragility, this utter dependence on living memory, leads to one of the most tragic and unresolved questions in the history of the Americas. What was lost when this chain of transmission was broken, when the Spanish conquest swept through the Andes? It brought not only war and violence, but devastating European diseases like smallpox, to which the indigenous population had no immunity. Epidemics wiped out an estimated 90% of the population in some areas. Imagine the effect this had on a knowledge system based on human memory. Entire villages would have been decimated, and with them, their quipu. It wasn't like burning a library, where some books might survive. Here, the librarian was the library. When he died, the knowledge contained in his quipus died with him. How many stories, histories, poems, and intricate records vanished forever? Not because the strings were destroyed, but because the minds that could read them were gone. We can only guess at the scale of this intellectual cataclysm. It is a haunting silence in the historical record, the ghost of a continent's worth of lost data. The sun is now low enough that the valley is completely cast in the shadow of the western mountains. A cool blue twilight is rising from the ground, and the air has that familiar evening crispness. The day's final rituals are beginning. Fires are being stoked, casting a warm orange glow that pushes back against the encroaching blue. The villagers are returning from the terraced fields, their long shadows preceding them on the stone paths. The gentle, rhythmic sounds of work are replaced by the softer sounds of homecoming, the murmur of greetings, the laughter of a child being swept up into a father's arms, the soft bleating of a llama being led to its pen. Asterisk, you see the Quipu walking slowly towards the communal storehouse. The Kolka. It is a solid, windowless, stone building. Its thick walls and thatched roof, designed to keep the contents cool and dry. He is followed by one of his apprentices, the older of the two. The boy walks with a quiet seriousness, aware that he is participating in an important, official act. Your guide motions for you to follow, keeping a respectful distance. This is the final accounting of the day, the closing of the books for this small corner of the empire. Asterisk, the storehouse door is a simple, heavy wooden plank, held in place by a rope latch. Inside, it is dark and cool, and smells richly of earth, potatoes, and dry maize. Sacks of grain and tubers are stacked neatly against the walls, and bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters. It is a portrait of communal wealth and security, a buffer against the harshness of the mountain environment. This food does not belong to any one family. It belongs to the Elu, to be distributed by the Quipu according to need, and as directed by the state. It's a widely known historical fact that this extensive system of warehouses was the backbone of the Inca state's power. It allowed them to feed their armies on the march, to support massive construction projects like the one you saw on the mountain, and to provide relief during times of drought or famine. An army, as the saying goes, marches on its stomach, and the Inca army marched on a stomach full of meticulously inventoried chuno and quinoa. The Quipu asterisk stands near the entrance while his apprentice does a quick, final inspection, ensuring everything is in its proper place and secure for the night. The boy reports back to his master in a low voice. The master listens, nods, and then takes out a small, simple quipu. It has only a few strings, and they are mostly unadorned. This is not a grand historical record or a complex census. This is a daily log. He finds the cord that represents the main storehouse, and with a few deft movements, he ties a single knot. This is the lesser known, wonderfully mundane detail of the system. It wasn't all epic histories and grand imperial decrees. So much of the Quipu's function was this: simple, daily, repetitive record keeping. Tying this one knot is the Inca equivalent of a modern store manager clicking save on their inventory spreadsheet at the end of the day. It's a small, quiet act of confirmation that says, all is well. The accounts are balanced. The day is properly closed. He holds the Quipu asterisk out for his apprentice to see, letting him verify the knot and its position. The boy studies it for a moment and then nods in agreement. The master seems satisfied, and this simple act of verification makes you wonder about the checks and balances within the system itself. How was fraud prevented on a local level? We know the empire had inspectors, but on a day-to-day basis, was there a required second signature? The Quipu was a figure of immense authority and trust in the village, but he was also human. Historians still debate the social and legal mechanisms that were in place to ensure the system's integrity. Was it a matter of professional pride, a deep-seated cultural ethic of honesty? Or was it the ever-present threat of a brutal punishment for anyone caught cheating the state? Perhaps the most powerful deterrent was the collective nature of the Elu itself. If the Quipu cheated, he wasn't just stealing from a distant, abstract state. He was stealing from his own family, his neighbors, the people who would have to face the consequences of a food shortage alongside him. The system was perhaps self-policing, held together by a web of mutual obligation. Asterisk, the apprentice secures the door to the storehouse. The day's wealth is safe. The Quipu Kamak rolls up his small daily log Quipu and tucks it into his bag. His work for the day is finally, truly done. He stands for a moment, looking out at the village as the first stars begin to appear in the deep blue sky. His face, in the soft twilight, is a mask of calm, quiet concentration. He is not a king or a warrior, but his role is just as vital. He is a weaver of order, a guardian of memory, a man who can read the silent, whispering language of the knots. He has spent his day in service to a complex, beautiful, and fragile system, a world built not on ink and paper, but on the strength of woolen fiber and the power of a well-trained mind. With a final, satisfied nod, he turns and walks back towards the warm glow of his home, disappearing into the gentle rhythm of the encroaching night. Asterisk. You return to the now familiar comfort of your guide's family hut. The fire in the central hearth has been built up. It's warm, dancing light filling the single room and chasing the cold shadows into the corners. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and the soft lanolin smell of the wool blankets. The family is gathered, their voices a low, gentle murmur. The sound of the Quechua language, a soothing melody that wraps around you like a warm cloak. The constant, cheerful squeaking of the guinea pigs has subsided into a softer, sleepier chorus. The day, with all its revelations, the swift runner, the patient teacher, the silent stones, the haunting flutes, finally complete. Asterisk. You are given a thick, woven blanket, and you find your spot on the raised platform along the wall. You lie back, your head resting on a soft bundle of cloth, and you simply listen. You listen to the crackle and pop of the fire, a sound that has comforted humans for hundreds of thousands of years. You listen to the soft, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping family around you, a sound of absolute peace and trust. Through the low doorway, you can see a perfect, sharp-edged slice of the night sky, a deep, impossible blackness dusted with the brilliant spray of the Milky Way. The stars in this thin, clear air do not twinkle. They burn with a steady, cold, white light. Asterisk. You close your eyes, and the journey of the day replays itself in your mind, not as a series of facts, but as a collage of sensory feelings. You feel the ghost of the coca leaf's numbness on your tongue, the strange tingle of acclimatizing to a different world. You feel the smooth, cool perfection of the mortarless stone wall under your fingertips, a testament to a patience you can barely comprehend. You feel the warmth of the clay bowl in your hands, the simple, profound satisfaction of a meal made from ancient grains. You can almost feel the soft, strong texture of the Quipu cord itself, a simple piece of string humming with the silent, potential energy of stored information. This is a widely accepted fact of human consciousness. Our most powerful memories are not intellectual, but sensory. The smell of wood smoke will now forever transport you back to this small stone hut in the Andes. Asterisk. You think about the world you've glimpsed, a civilization of incredible complexity and scale, managed without a single written word. It's a concept so alien to our text-saturated lives that it's almost difficult to hold in your mind. We think of writing as the bedrock of civilization, the essential technology for complex society. Yet here was an empire that charted the stars, built thousands of miles of roads, managed a planned economy, and created monumental architecture, all through a system of knots, runners, and memory. It's a quirky, almost defiant detail of human history, a reminder that our way of doing things is not the only way, that ingenuity finds many paths. The Inca found a different operating system for civilization, one that was tactile, communal, and profoundly human. Asterisk. As you lie there, drifting on the edge of sleep, a final, gentle question settles in your mind. What did it feel like to live in a world without writing? Did it make memory more sacred? Did it make the spoken word more powerful, more binding? In a world where a person's promise couldn't be written down and filed away, did it have to be held more deeply in the heart? Did the absence of written distraction, no scrolls to read, No letters to compose mate, the senses sharper, more attuned to the subtle language of the natural world. The whisper of the wind, the feel of a coming storm, the silent stories told by the stars. We can never truly know, but as you lie in this quiet, firelit room, surrounded by the deep, profound silence of the mountain night, you feel you are as close to that feeling as anyone from your noisy, literate world can ever be. Asterisk, your breathing deepens, slowing to match the rhythm of the sleeping village. The fuzzy, light-headed feeling of the high altitude has been replaced by a pleasant, heavy weariness in your limbs. The hard stone floor beneath your blanket feels like the most comfortable bed in the world. You are a world away from everything you know, a silent guest in an ancient time, but you do not feel like a stranger. You have been welcomed. You have been fed. You have been shown the quiet, beautiful, intricate machinery of a lost world. And now, there is nothing left to do but sleep. You let the last of your thoughts dissolve, like smoke drifting up from the fire and out into the vast, starry night. You let the silence of the Andes cradle you. You let go. Hey,